The world's top cities will look completely different in 100 years. Super tall skyscrapers, earth scrapers, floating communities, and eco-villages could all change the landscape of some of our favorite places. From New York to London, many of the changes happening in cities around the world focus on creating 15-minute cities, which are segments of a city that are highly walkable, where everything from entertainment to education to healthcare are conveniently located. British design house Neomam Studios created graphics of what they think popular cities should look like in the future, based on data from previous urban growth. But how accurate will these futuristic skylines turn out to be? Let's take a look. New York. We'll start with one of the most iconic cities in the world, New York. Forecasts predict that by 2106, the city will need room for a 50% increase in population. Future architecture will need to find places to put them all. Designs for the future of the Big Apple showcase sky bridges, high-tech rail systems, high-rises incorporating nature, and a focus on walkable neighborhoods. Residences could be connected by rooftop parks and raised bridges, while a series of new skyscrapers changes the New York skyline. As the city's population rises, something else threatens to rise as well: sea levels. By 2100, the sea level could be 6 feet higher. Around 20,000 acres of the city could end up underwater. But urban planners have ideas for how New York could cope with the floods. Firstly, there would need to be barriers built on the edges of Manhattan. Permeable streets would allow water to pass through. The city would need to develop more diverse green spaces to absorb heavy water. NYC 2050 by Walmir Luz addresses the climate crisis by letting the floods be part of city life. The idea of transformable parks is a cool one, where areas could be used as parks when not underwater, but no harm would be done if sea levels rise. Parks and public spaces could also be made above street level, raised safely out of harm's way. New York in 2100 will also focus on sustainable design. Datner architects want to create a completely eco-friendly power plant that will transform solid waste into synthetic gas. A more sustainable New York is the pathway to creating a city that will last well beyond 2100. Dubai. Now let's check in on Dubai. This city has undergone radical changes in the last 50 years. It's now home to one of the world's most breathtaking skylines, as well as the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. But there are more changes planned for its future. Dubai's big ideas for the next 100 years or so include drone taxis, a hyperloop, and vertical farming. There are some very specific projects in mind for the city's next phase of innovation. So let's look at a few of them. First up is an idea by Moon World's Resort to create the Moon Dubai. With an overall height of 735 feet, this epic structure will contain everything from a spa and a nightclub to luxury residences. Its design won't just be based on the moon. It'll actually contain training services for space agencies and astronauts. There's also the idea for the Downtown Circle, designed by Znera Space. It would be a 1,640-foot tall giant ring around the Burj Khalifa with public, private, and commercial spaces. It would be entirely self-sustainable and self-sufficient. Inspired by Pearl diving and envisioned by LYX Architecture, Pearl Mosque is another unique concept that would stand out in Dubai. There's also Graft Architect's idea for a vertical village, which would stand out amongst the city's impressive skyline. With these creative concepts, we can see why Dubai is called the City of the Future. It seems to live by the motto, "The future is now." Its innovative Museum of the Future officially opened in 2022. Paris. Paris is also trying to push itself into the future with radical changes to its cityscape. Vincent Calibout has developed a concept to tackle the city's housing issues with multiple high-rise buildings that do away with boring architecture and opt for a more innovative, greener Paris. The proposal is for 8 multi-use structures spread throughout the city. Paris is aiming to significantly reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and this concept integrates sustainable energy production while also encouraging citizens to practice eco-friendly habits through a prominent relationship with nature. The towers blend with the cityscape, often sitting directly on top of existing buildings in an effort to expand Paris's history and architecture instead of replacing it. Calibout's idea will utilize natural processes like passive heating and cooling and rainwater retention. Green spaces like suspended gardens will bring their purifying effects to the city. The towers in this concept will be mixed use, so there'll be residential, commercial, and business spaces. They'll cut down the need for cars and travel time, which will further decrease the city's greenhouse gas emissions. Other plans for a more nature-inspired Paris include rooftop gardens, vertical farms, and making the Seine clean enough for swimming. Increased mixed-use buildings will make the 15-minute city more plausible, while abandoned or outdated buildings and spaces can be repurposed, breathing new life into the iconic location. London. Next up is London, a city that's been envisioned in many different ways over the years. There have been futuristic dreams of a walking city, a city in the air, and a city with a huge high-tech stadium shaped like a globe. Concepts have even been designed for a digital Big Ben. But what is London actually going to look like in 100 years or so? A group of British adults voted on likely architectural developments in their city and decided that super deep basements are the most probable development in the next 100 years. That's probably true, as the city thinks up ways to house more people and services. But London will likely also use the water as a prime development location, with reef-like and floating structures. Rooftops and floating communities could also make space for increased urban farming. A green London reimagined in the year 2121 by environmental scientist Alan Marshall pictures London Centre as a massive eco-village. There'll be gardens on street corners, small sustainable businesses spread throughout the city, and people will work more remotely, allowing many offices to be transformed into nature-friendly residential buildings. Marshall pictures the London of the future as a place where children can learn and play. They'll develop a better relationship with nature, which will help London progress from the year 2100 to a hopefully even greener 2200. Bangkok. If we head to Bangkok, we can see a transforming skyline in action. There are many new buildings under construction in the city right now, from One Bangkok to Dusit Central Park, a series of 3 innovative towers. Bangkok's location leaves it vulnerable to flooding that gets worse every year. Architects and urban planners have come up with ideas for making the city more future-proof. These ideas include a vision for a river city. Citizens must learn to adapt to life with increased water, so perhaps the future will bring structures like floating markets and villages with increased solar farms as a means for sustainable energy production. The Bangkok of the future will also have to be a green city. The city must build energy-efficient skyscrapers that incorporate nature, as well as more green spaces that can absorb the heavy rains. In the next 100 years, the city will likely see the development of dome-like protective structures, sky bridges, and parks that can convert and adapt to rising sea levels. Toronto. The last city we'll look at is Toronto. Carl Blanchard of WZMH Architects thinks Toronto and Canada in general could be more creative with their architecture, but there are some creative ideas to revamp Toronto's cityscape, such as this idea to transform the city's eastern waterfront. Quayside Smart City was developed by Sidewalk Labs to transform the waterfront into a multi-use area with offices, commercial and residential spaces. However, the project has been scaled back to just 12 acres out of its original 190-acre design. So what new architecture will the city actually see in the next century? It's estimated that around 3.5 million people will live in the Toronto area by 2030. So in just the next few years, we'll see taller and slimmer buildings, as well as the redevelopment of parks and historic buildings. However, some bigger projects will get off the ground, and eventually maybe the eastern waterfront will reach its revolutionary project goal. For now, the Portland's Flood Protection Project plans to transform 600 acres of land into parks, wildlife habitat, and a meandering riverside, and eventually housing for 20,000 residents. Which of these cities of the future looks the most appealing to you? How do you think these cities will transform? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more futuristic city transformations.